Akira Shiroyanagi, an ordinary loner who spends most of his free time playing video games, happened to take a walk to school when a figure looking like Diddy attempted to capture him. But when Akira managed to beat him in his own game, he was quickly hit with the Toji Special Deluxe combo that should have ended him right there and then. However, when Akira woke up, he found himself reincarnated in a strange room, probably owned by P. Diddy, and is told that everyone in this room must eliminate each other in order to survive and consider the outside world to no longer exist to them. On one fateful day, Akira's features contort in intense concentration as he dominates the virtual battlefield. That is, until the moment his connection was lost, ripping him from the clutches of victory. A frustrated groan escapes his lips as he laments the loss of another chance to ascend the leaderboards. Akira scarfs down his breakfast and gets dressed for his boring school life. As he wanders outside, two girls whisper about him, mentioning that despite never stopping gaming, not even in class, he always aced the tests. Akira hears every word. They spoke the truth. School was just memorizing stuff for him. Work was as easy as it was for your ex to cheat on you. Video games were his one true passion. As he crosses the road, eyes glued to his phone game, a person comes out of a van, looking quite similar to my uncle, tries to smash him, or that could be P. Diddy. Same thing, I guess. He dodges all the beefy guy's punches like a kung fu master. He grabs a bike and pedals away at light speed, but P. Diddy wouldn't quit. Akira racked his big brain. Why was this weirdo chasing only him? Maybe call the cops. However, this was just like a game, and Akira, being the loser he is, decided to treat real life like this as just a game. Up ahead, he spots a crumbly abandoned place, thinking P. Diddy would have trouble with all that rubble, but not nimble Akira, or so he thought, until the jacked P. Diddy leaped over the debris like he saw a girl. Akira loops some ropes around a huge pillar, then he knocks it onto his foe. The boulder-headed brute just shrugs it off. P. Diddy finds the strength to stand up despite the injuries. As he jumps towards Akira, he takes a pole and shoves it into his heart, eliminating it. From this encounter, Akira thought all games could be beaten. As he catches his breath, a creepy cat lady appears, congratulating him on defeating her pet by giving him the Toji Hollow Purple Special. With a cruel cackle, she tells him that the games aren't over yet. He awakes cuffed in a strange room, with other confused people, thinking that P. Diddy has got them all. A cat lady prances on stage in a goofy costume, introducing herself as Miss Mion, their guide to this deadly experiment. She babbles about them being erased from society and forced to battle each other for their own amusement. When one person protests, Miss Mion eliminates them with the Toji Special. Miss Mion explains in a silly voice that their restraints blocked their new superpowers, but when deactivated, they'd use those powers to fight to the death. Anyone lacking value would be terminated forever. Among the players was Akira's super genius classmate Ringo, and there was Madoka, the biggest academic failure like yourself.
What more do you want from me?
Shortly after, a woman named Young approaches the stage and announces that the first stage of the program will begin. In this stage, they were all to have a series of simple duels. She takes all of them to their different rooms so they can practice their abilities. When the first duel began, Akira couldn't believe his eyes. Madoka was his opponent. The loser begs Akira to forfeit, claiming his abilities were crazy strong and nasty, impossible to beat. But Akira just laughs in Madoka's face, as if he'd back down. The battle commences. Madoka's stick morphs into a big sharp blade. He tries slashing at Akira, but with lightning speed, Akira makes Madoka think he dodged the slices with backflips. Madoka looks utterly confused, his blade passing through nothing but air. Akira wins the fight at the end and Madoka has no option but to surrender. It turned out Akira's abilities were that of an illusion against his opponents, whatever his opponents think his abilities are. He will just have to arrange the right timing to voice the ability of his opponents and create an environment where they'll believe it. Akira struts back to his room victoriously. He vows to master this crazy mind-bending power to the max, promising himself that he will take revenge on that cat lady that has Satoru Gojo's special move. Miss Mion is one happy kitty watching her games from the control room. She couldn't stop grinning, especially when her favorite player Akira showed off his trippy mind-tricking powers. Going back to the past about Yuri, who was out strolling with her friends. They jab at her for always skipping class to work and make cash. The three girls soon came across a small beautiful dog pet. The pet is especially friendly with the two girls, but when Yuri walks up to play with the pet, it barks at her. She gets angry too and walks away. Her friends tell her not to take it personally. As they gossip, Yuri's mind wanders to that one time she helped out a stinky homeless dude. She lent him a hanky to clean his nasty face, but then the creep started stalking her everywhere. When Yuri finally makes it home, her mom is cackling with another one of her bar-hopping boyfriends. Yuri couldn't stand those revolving doors of sleazaballs her mom always dragged in. But this time, the boyfriend had a daughter around Yuri's age that they dumped right on her. As she walked the streets, she saw her stalker weirdo on a roof, about to jump off the building. She attempted to stop him, although it's not that she cared if he died, it's just the fact he was right there in front of her. Only for the motherfricker to say double it and give it to the next person, because he took her down with him, as it is the story on how she ended up dying in their world. Watching it all go down, Miss Mion licks her lips. She couldn't wait to see what crazy abilities this girl had. Frustrated at her captivity, Yuri starts punching and kicking the walls, putting all her strength into busting out. But the room just wouldn't budge, no matter how hard she raged. Yuri slumps down, depressed that her life was such a dumpster fire. She remembers having to play nanny for her mom's boyfriend's brat kid Riria once, as if Yuri's life couldn't get any worse. Soon it was time for Yuri's challenge, a brawl against a humongous baldy named Kazuto. The second their cuffs spring off, Kazuto comes barreling at Yuri, using his freaky super smeller powers to sniff out her weaknesses.
What'd I do?
Go, just go.
Next thing she knows, the brute has her in a chokehold, yakking about some girl he strangled for not paying up after services rendered. Well, Yuri wasn't about to take that lying down. Unleashing her quirk, she multiplies her power by 5, shattering Kazuto's arm with a bone-crunching squeeze. The meathead couldn't believe a teenage girl was overpowering him so easily. Up in the control room, Miss Mion and her sidekick Yang watches with delighted awe at Yuri's ferocious activation. They cannot help but admire how fast she was already moving like that. It's supposed to be hard for her to walk with such power at first. However, Mion concludes that the situational stress made her unleash it instinctively. Meanwhile, back in his quarters, Akira is plotting his mentor's downfall. His trippy hallucination tricks were gonna help him dismantle this whole messed up operation. They may have busted him out of reality, but he'd get payback by twisting their minds into knots. Suddenly, guards burst in and dragged Akira to a new room. Miss Mion's voice booms that the next game was a 5-on-5 team battle royale starting in 2 hours. Akira cracks his knuckles menacingly. This was the perfect chance to put his abilities to the test and show that wacky fursuit lady who was boss. As the players gather, you could cut the tension with a knife. One wrong move in this demented circus, and it was curtains. But Akira had no plans to be the next victim. With his psyche powers reaching full potential, he was about to run circles around these freaks. As the rules for the new game blasts out, Akira's brain kicks into overdrive. If they were gonna team up, he'd have to spill the beans about his freaky mind control abilities. But he couldn't risk the wrong person finding out. They might use that knowledge against him. The first to break the tense silence is Sawatari, suggesting they introduce themselves and devise a plan of attack. With a flourish, he illustrated his useless-ass ability to transform buttons into ropes, much to Yuri's vocal skepticism. One by one, the others unveil their quirks. Fumajiri, a muscly ex-wrestler dude, could become invincible. For 2 whole seconds, riveting, Akira decides to throw them off his scent, claiming he could morph his hands into cannons. So this whole team is full of elites, then you have this useless Sawatari guy. Akira asks Yuri about her strengths while using her abilities. She decides to demonstrate by jumping up on the ceiling effortlessly. As they make their way out of the room to the arena, Mr. Sawatari warns them to eliminate their opponents if they have a chance. He reminds them that Miss Mion had told them from the start that there would be no penalties for eliminating a group member. Stepping into the ring, they face off against 4 mysterious opponents, the 5th one slinking in the shadows like he's another P. Diddy. Suddenly, Miss Mion's freaky voice booms overhead, announcing a series of one-on-one matches to determine the ultimate victors. However, it was all a ruse. The first combatants were supposed to be Sawatari and that Rin chick. Turns out this team battle thing was just a ploy to get them chatting about their abilities. The fight kicks off and it gets ugly fast. Sawatari does a friendly coin toss, but the second he looks up, Rin launches a salvo of blades right into his heart. The guy dropped like a sack of potatoes, blood gushing everywhere. The poor sap didn't stand a chance. As the medical squad hauls away what was left of Sawatari, the next pairing is announced, Shin versus Ringo, that tiny sweetheart. Shin thinks he lucks out, stomping towards her with a cocky grin. But just as their bout began, Ringo really just forfeits the match. With a polite hand wave, not really caring for the match, leaving Shin and everyone else gobsmacked. Rin loses it, grabbing Ringo by the throat while screaming what the heck was wrong with her. But then Mion breaks it up, revealing Ringo's freaky superpower. She could copy anyone else's abilities at 10% strength. Sneaky. Next up, Madoka and Seiko enter the arena, both brandishing some killer gear. Seiko fires off a wicked slingshot, but Madoka just swings his sword and cuts that boulder clean in half like a martial arts master. Seiko swings more of his stones, but Madoka is swift. Even when he runs close to Siko, he is able to slit that BS in half, which leaves everyone in surprise. Turns out his ability is not just to transform a stick into a sword, but also this same sword can slice through everything. The arena crackles with tension as Madoka deftly deflects every attack Siko flings his way. With a cocky grin and hair flip, he taunts her to forfeit while suggesting it was becoming a rerun of her last 10 straight losses to him, way too embarrassing for broadcast. Siko gulps, picturing the sadistic smile and dreaded tickle torture of her teammate, Rin, if she dared give up. Gritting her teeth, she doubles down, unleashing a furious marble barrage to box the preening Madoka into an inescapable corner. As she rears back her final shot, Madoka reacts with dramatic slow-motion moves, snapping his staff in two and batting away her slingshot. His mouth opens to deliver some cheesy one-liner, but it turns to a high-pitched yelp as Siko's returning marble gets him straight in the family jewels. He crumples like a rag doll and she is announced winner of the challenge. Next up were Akira and the utterly clueless Kuji Kitajima. Akira's teammates offer hearty slaps on the back, urging him not to screw this up and let their creepy opponent get the upper hand. Akira forces a reassuring smile, voicing his thoughts that even if they lost, he couldn't imagine their captors would eliminate them since they were too valuable as entertainers for their twisted human dog fighting ring. However, the haunted look in his eyes suggests even he didn't fully buy the "hey, we're on" reasoning. The match begins and Akira quickly realizes his hapless opponent has no clue how to access his powers, looking dazed and constantly picking his wedgie. Seizing the opportunity, the confident Akira blasts Kuji with his cannon ability, but the energy projection simply winked out, with Akira's cannon following suit to dangle limply. Improvising, Akira hurls his sweat-stained shoe, clocking the dazed Kuji right in his continually surprised face. As the poor guy crumples, Akira rushes behind him and grabs his hands like a playground bully, demanding Kuji raise them while revealing his third-grade deduction that he could nullify his opponent's abilities as far as he touched the ground. Kuji only nods meekly in surrender as Miss Mion declares Akira the victor. Last up were Yuri and her obsessed stalker, Aoji Hoshino. The smarmy creep licks his lips hungrily while firing aggressive finger blasts, delighting in making her acquaintance again in an overly familiar way that sends shivers down Yuri's spine. She freezes in revulsion as she recognizes the leering face that had haunted her nightmares, along with persistently Freudian imagery of phallic cylinders and cavernous voids. Akira's pal Shin looks on worriedly, wondering aloud if the untrained girl stands a chance against the unhinged freak with clear delusional and projecting tendencies, even with her boosted abilities. Akira shrugs nonchalantly, expressing faith that her raw power was insane and unstoppable whether trained or not. That chick could probably bench press a semi-truck if motivated. Enraged by Aoji's sleazy taunts, Yuri explodes into furious berserker action with a feral roar. The stalker brags smugly about his ability to shrug off any assault right before getting decked with enough force to dislodge a molar. As he staggers, he doubles down on the boasts about being impervious, only to get an earth-shattering punch straight to the cajones. Yuri's savage onslaught overwhelms his defenses in a savage, unmerciful beating, leaving Aoji crumpled and perhaps needing a medic as Yuri is declared the indisputable victor. Akira gawks, thoroughly impressed and affirming his earlier assessment of her as a holy terror given human form. Just then, their cruel mistress Mion appears to congratulate the winners and announce the loser's punishment with a sadistic grin. After forcing the losing team to suffer the indignity of serving a lavish dinner to the victors while dressed as French maids, Mion declares the competition will proceed to its third phase. She orders the mortified losers to clear away the dishes while ogling them lecherously, then had everyone's eyes blindfolded as they were marched like prisoners to separate dark paths with instructions to follow them to their mysterious fates. The twisted game of torment and battle is only just beginning, leaving all to wonder what fresh nightmares awaited them. Akira wanders down the ominous hallway, feeling a bit like a mouse in a labyrinth constructed by sociopathic scientists, desperately overcompensating for being shunned by the cool STEM crowd in high school. To his surprise, he stumbles upon a lonely smartphone resting on a side table, its blank screen judging him silently. Mion's sinister voice suddenly crackles over the speakers like nails on a chalkboard, announcing his cuffs were about to be unlocked and that he must keep the phone on him at all times. For the third phase, Akira would start with 100 points. He'd need to collect 1,000 points. Akira braces himself as a door slid open, half expecting ravenous lions or a spike pit inspired by tales of the Spanish Inquisition. Instead, he is greeted by serene nature. Lush woods stretched out invitingly before him as Mion's voice supplies the unlikely time of 1:18 p.m. in a tone more befitting a soothing meadow stream. These deranged magicians were going for a nature retreat vibe, perhaps to lull their victims into a false sense of security before springing whatever fresh diabolical traps awaited. Akira ventures forth, only to quickly encounter a shadowy figure perched on a tree branch like a demented Cheshire cat who had taken too much cold medicine. To his surprise, the guy held up his hands in a surrender gesture, insisting in a tone more suited to a youth hostel that he just wants to recruit Akira to his squad. Before Akira could respond, Yuri comes barreling through the woods with all the grace of a drunken wildebeest, a mob of red-clad goons hot on her tail. The Tough Mudder crowd sports cheesy dragon symbols more fitting for an off-brand vape shop, identifying themselves as the nefarious red team hellbent on capturing the youths for God knows what nefarious purposes. Tree Lurker, for that's what Akira has dubbed this new erratic friend, tries negotiating with the tooled-up punks, vowing in his best sesquipedalian English accent that he'd never sell out innocent kids, not even for a sloppy courtesy slurpee. When diplomacy predictably failed in the face of such committed maladjustment, the showdown was on. Fists and abilities flew as Akira and the Reds traded blasts, with Tree Lurker providing covering archery fire straight out of a low-budget Robin Hood flick to allow the kids to book it. Once they'd gained some ground, their new eco-friend introduces himself as the folksy Katsuya Seidu, thanking them profusely for the assist against those dastardly Reds. Akira insists they're the ones to thank him as those men were going to drag them away against their will. It was obvious they were going to hurt them to get whatever they wanted. Yuri, ever the astute observer, wonders aloud about the whole Reds versus Greens drama like they were color-coded rivals at some twisted summer camp reliving their Hogan's Heroes fantasies. Katsuya explains there were various factions angling to complete quests and rack up points in whatever deranged Triwizard tournament they'd found themselves participating in, with the unhinged Reds as the biggest threat due to their crazy abilities and sharp minds. Embracing the team spirit with a resigned shrug, Akira promptly requests to join the Greens. Katsuya eagerly accepts, like a frat brother spotting a couple of freshmen ripe for hazing, whisking them back to the Greens' homely forest compound. They are met by Shima, who welcomes them to their home. They walk in looking around in awe. It is like a village with people going about normal activities. A woman walks up with her baby named Taro to welcome Katsuya. Yuri is surprised to find a baby there and wonders if babies were captured too. But Katsuya explains that the mom was 3 months pregnant when she arrived and the son was born as his citizen. That's why the baby had no cuffs, unlike the other residents. Taro's mother holds out her baby to Yuri and permits her to hold her. Akira is particularly surprised. He wonders about the sudden twist of the third phase of the program. Akira and Yuri are soon taken to meet the Green team leader. He introduces himself as Shirasagi and thanks them for saving Katsuya's life. Shirasagi recounts how the Reds had forsaken all decency, kidnapping and exploiting the weak to consolidate their twisted kingdom. Thus, the noble Greens had arisen to protect the meek and thwart the Reds' douchebaggery. There is also a suspiciously neutral blue team that Shirasagi eye-rolled as typical Switzerland types. But Akira wants a good reason to join their team. The tension is thick enough to spread on toast as Akira aims with his illusory cannon. Its ghostly barrel points squarely at the chest of Shirasagi. The grizzled green leader calmly challenges him to fire away, figuring the brash kid might finally shut his yap once he witnesses Shirasagi's power firsthand. Turns out it was all an impromptu hazing ritual. Akira is simply testing whether this team has what it takes to thwart the dastardly Reds. Satisfied the old hippie could walk the walk, he agrees to officially enlist. Though he did make a mental note to keep the guy's stash well away from the communal brownie tray. Later, as the Greens' ranks swelled with recruits, Coordinator Momoko was having a monumental crisis over the housing shortage. Luckily, the ever-gallant Akira smoothly offers to shack up with Yuri to free up a room. Once they are alone, Akira turns on the charm offensive, thanking his new roomie for the honor of cohabitating. He apologizes for any perceived impropriety. He just wanted to spend some quality solo time so he could, you know, dish some deep dark secrets. Yuri watches warily as he produces a folded note with all the gravity of a magic trick. When she unfurls the paper, her eyes go whiter than fried eggs. Akira had spilled the beans. His true power is telepathy. Before she could stammer a response, he concentrated intently, letting her hear his disembodied voice echoing inside her skull. Wild stuff, but she manages to send him some brain waves in return. Akira was thrilled. From now on, they could communicate telepathically to avoid any eavesdroppers or voyeuristic magicians. Speaking of which, Akira suspects their shoebox quarters were bugged 6 ways to Sunday. Not that he didn't trust the leadership, except for how he totally didn't, judging by that paranoid gleam in his eye. And who could blame him after his abilities made him such a prized human lab rat? Better to be safe and keep things on the down low via their newly unlocked telepathy. The crafty kid suggests this mind link allows them to truly bond over deep conversations about their respective talents, like a first date with bonus psychological prompts. Yuri shares her yearning to return home to the babysitting charge she'd been ripped away from, little Riria. Akira, meanwhile, has his eye on the bigger picture. He was here to win this sick game, and then get payback on their tormentor Mion. Daddy issues be darned. As they shake on their fresh alliance, Akira admits one final truth: his power isn't telepathy or cannons at all. In reality, his ability simply shapeshifted to match whatever his opponent expected, like the world's lamest Mystique impersonation. Definitely a handy trick for parties. Their heart-to-heart was cut short by Akira's cell phone crackling with an ominous message from Mion herself. She'd cooked up a fresh quest called Goo Goo Ghouls, an all-out monster bash starting at 9 AM the next morning in the ruins. She suggests getting a good night's rest before the bloodbath. How thoughtful. The next day, Shiroyanagi rallies his troops, explaining this Mion-designed quest would offer a major points windfall. He divides the Greens into strategic squads, leaving the dynamic duo of Akira and Yuri to fly solo as a two-person wrecking crew. When they arrive at the ruins, Mion greets the gathered teams from her lofty perch before unleashing a horde of terrifying ghouls upon them. She cheerfully announced the quest would end when either every ghoul or human lay slain, with 30 points awarded per ghoul eliminated. Just your typical fun family outing. The action kicks off immediately as the ghouls swarm, with the green squads battling hard using their unique abilities and creative combos. Mion looks on approvingly until the reds crash the party, that dastardly lot deploying captured slaves as grotesque human shields against the ghoul onslaught. Just when it seems the Greens are getting the upper hand, Mion cackles and unveils her masterpiece, a towering amalgam monstrosity she calls Mion. This ghoul Godzilla proves virtually unstoppable, shrugging off even Akira's illusory abilities. Shiroyanagi knew he had to step up, driven by the haunting memory of failing his beloved wife Ritsuko all those years ago. Grief fuels his counter-assault as he unleashes his hidden power, finally slaying the behemoth single-handedly. The downside? Now the Reds know his game too. But the nightmare isn't over. As the Greens gather their breath, Mion starts greedily devouring the fallen ghouls, replenishing its stamina to rise again, bigger and nastier than before. The beleaguered heroes could only gape in soul-crushing horror as their mentor's jaw tightened grimly. Shiroyanagi knew this situation was about to get real. Yudo Shiroyanagi, who is hurt and is bleeding, still faces the monster relentlessly. Seidu and Yuri both run towards him with the intent of helping out, but he yells at them, sounding rather weird as he calls Seidu and Yuri fools, ordering them to stay out of the fight and leave the scene immediately. Yuri does not listen and tries to go towards Yudo, but Seidu stops her, saying that she cannot help Yudo at that point. Akira, who is also there with them, cuts in as he agrees with Seidu, saying that Yudo has made the right decision, reminding them that Yuri needs to be alive so she can see Riria. Yuri knows they are right, but still stubbornly goes ahead and dashes forward to help Yudo. Yudo is shielding himself against the monster's strikes when Yuri arrives and immediately jumps and strikes the monster. Yudo is furious and yells only at her this time, asking why she is there, and Yuri claps back immediately, saying she was there to save him. Just as they are both distracted by their argument, the monster strikes and sends both of them crashing to the ground. It then tries to crush them with its fists, but Akira intervenes and blasts, hitting it with a powerful blast. Mion watches on and she is impressed as she sees that bit of display by Akira. Yudo is still furious, but Akira urges him to stay calm as he has a plan, and after a fierce encounter, he manages to take the monster down with Yuri's help. Hajime, leader of Team Red, steps in and finishes the monster off completely as it is about getting up to strike again. Afterwards, Hajime challenges Akira, Yudo, and Yuri to take him on, but Mion cuts in and prevents it from happening. She then introduces a quest to them where both teams would engage in a battle to obtain a rival team's interface. After a little argument, both teams agree to battle and Mion sets a couple of weird terms and rules for it. Back at Team Green's camp, Yudo asks to see Akira after he gets patched up, and when Akira is seated in his room, Yudo asks to know what other powers Akira possesses, as he is stunned by what he saw him do to the monster earlier. Akira doesn't answer but confirms that he has another ability other than the cannon. As members of Team Green catch up with each other, an announcement is made by Mion as she informs them about the battle that will take place in 7 days. She also reminds them that everyone on the losing team dies. After the announcement, Yudo then addresses the team, urging them all to get up and fight to win. However, Akira is disappointed as he knows that Mion's plan to make both teams fight is working. Her plan is a rather self-centered one as she, alongside the sub-leader of the opponent team, plans to eliminate some of the competition by hosting this battle. Ringo meets up with Akira and tries to inquire about his abilities, which makes him a bit enraged, but everything gets calm after some moments. Ringo also asks to be Akira's partner, adding that she had been in Team Red's camp once and as thus, her knowledge would be very helpful for the battle ahead of them. At that time, Yuri is on her way to thank Akira for helping out. but she isn't able to as she sees him with Ringo. At Team Red's camp, Master Masaya makes his evil arrangements for the battle as he gathers a couple of people with special abilities. An informant who escapes from Team Green earlier arrives and asks to see Masaya, and when his request is granted, he tells Masaya about Akira, stressing the fact that he possesses a very unique ability. Masaya is a bit shaken by the information and goes looking for Ikai and also informs him about Akira's unique ability, adding that the cannon is just something he uses to hide his real powers. Akira decides to go with Yuri to Team Blue's camp, and on the way, she asks why he wants to go there. He replies, saying he wants to negotiate with them. But then he stops and adds that he also wanted to be alone with her at that spot where they have just stopped. His intent is to know more about his abilities. They practice for a few minutes and then Akira proceeds to tell Yuri about his meeting with Ringo the previous day. They continue their journey afterward and they meet up with 3 members of Team Blue, including their leader. Team Blue's leader introduces himself to them as Amoto and then asks to know what they want. Akira introduces himself and Yuri to Amoto as well and then says that his mission is to pass a message across to Team Blue. He goes ahead to tell them about the battle that is to happen between Teams Green and Red and further explains that the rule allows them to recruit whoever wants to join up with them. All 3 of the Blue Team's members tell him that they don't want to be part of the fight. Akira, who doesn't show any form of disappointment, offers to pay 200 points to each participant and 500 points to anyone who can steal Team Red's interface. Team Blue's leader, Amoto, weighs up Akira's offer but declines, saying that the offer only stands if Team Green wins and they are not sure Team Green stands a chance as Akira seems so desperate to recruit more people. Amoto then says that he will pass Akira's message across if he accepts his offer of handing Yuri over to them. Akira bluntly refuses and Amoto says that he is very certain that she must be Akira's girlfriend. Akira then adds that the only way it'll work is if Amoto joins the fight himself. Amoto does not accept and leaves with the other 2. At that moment, Akira and Yuri notice Kurosaki, who interrupts their conversation after Amoto and the others have left. The fact that Kurosaki might have been eavesdropping makes Yuri a little furious. Kurosaki then informs Akira that he has joined Team Red so he can get a rematch against him. He expects Akira to be shaken by the information, but all Akira does is wish him good luck and then leaves with Yuri. Kurosaki, mentally losing it, screams. Akira and Yuri arrive at their base and Akira is informed that the team leader wants to see him. On getting to where he was asked to meet up with the leader, Akira is introduced to several individuals who volunteered to join the battle. There is a feast afterward as everyone in Team Blue's camp catches up with each other. Most of their conversations are centered on the battle with Team Red. It's the day everyone has been waiting for, the Battle Quest Day, also called the Hunt the King Quest. Both teams are assembled in the area in which the battle is to take place, and an instructor gives out the final guidelines and rules for the battle quest. The battle begins and Yudo immediately orders that some of the fighters spread out, take over, and secure at least 3 out of the 5 towers there. Before letting them embark on the quest, he thanks everyone for their willingness to fight. Yudo stays back with a couple of other fighters as they all try to figure out a good strategy to defeat Team Red. They notice that no one from the opponent's camp has been seen yet and they all wonder why. Probably because P. Diddy got to them before they did. The fighters have split into teams and Team Seidu then reports that they have successfully secured one of the towers. Another team moves to secure a second tower but is confronted by Hajime of the Red's team. They all are confused as they wonder why he is out there fighting since they believe him to be the king of the Red team. One of them decides to face Hajime Ugami, hoping to buy some time as they wait for help. Unfortunately, but as expected, Hajime is too strong for her and easily knocks her out. Team Red are now fully engaged in the battle and there is massive bloodshed, as they are too strong for most of the fighters from Team Green. Rin Kashiai then finds and faces Akira. Episode 9. Nothing serious happened between Akira and Rin Kashiai. Not even a single punch is exchanged and after a little deal is struck between them both, Akira is off to locate his team. Rin Kashiai then calls and informs Team Red that she has just spotted Akira. Shin Kumajiri senses someone walking down the path and he hides and waits. The figure draws close and he pops out of his hiding to face him, but to his greatest surprise, the figure has somehow vanished and is standing behind him. Kumajiri then turns and faces the figure, who is actually Yuuki Sadaguchi. Yuuki Sadaguchi, who had just murdered several Team Green's fighters, now asks to know from Kumajiri the whereabouts of his team. He also tells Kumajiri about what he did to the other set of people he met. Kumajiri is annoyed as he dashes forward and grabs Yuuki by the neck. Kumajiri notices that his cuff starts shrinking and lets go of his opponent's neck. Yuuki feels his neck and then exposes his powers to Kumajiri, which is the ability to shrink things. Yuuki, who is evil, shrinks Kumajiri's cuff more and it cuts his hands off from his wrist, but no worries, Kumajiri does not die like the others. Elsewhere, Ugami finds out that he is being used by Kuro for selfish reasons. He is even more irritated as Kuro hangs up on him. He proceeds to finish off Asuka, who is already unconscious, but before his blow strikes her, Yuri arrives and knocks him off balance. She then applies the skills she was taught by Akira and tries to tackle Ugami, but it doesn't work out as she hoped it would. Back at the camp of Team Blue, a spy amongst them had been found and captured. But this spy refused to speak, making it a little difficult to find out what the enemy was planning. Somehow, Ringo manages to make him speak. She leaves to get water as he requested, but as she returns, what she sees sends shivers down her spine and she alerts the others. The spy who they had tied to a tree was murdered, and there could be just one way that it could have happened. That way being that another spy was in their midst. Akira has a little verbal exchange with Yuri, who argues that they both have to save Asuka, but Akira tells her that every fighter knew the risks before deciding to fight, adding that the plan is to defeat Ciroa, the brains of the Red. Yuri is furious and leaves Akira, who is irritated but stays calm because he had made another plan just in case he and Yuri went separate ways. He heads in the opposite direction, and on the way, he runs into Kurosaki, who attacks him almost instantly. Reindu also arrives at the scene and tries to eliminate Akira, but surprisingly, Kurosaki prevents him from doing so, saying that he wants to be the person who eliminates Akira. Reindu, who Kurosaki addresses as Baldy, is furious that Kurosaki is trying to prevent him from eliminating Akira, and swears that he will murder them both. Akira planned to make Kurosaki his partner, and he has achieved it as Kurosaki has just decided to fight alongside him against Reindu. After a fierce encounter, they both take Reindu down successfully. Elsewhere, Renka and Rin-Kashii, who are on the same team, get into a fight. Rin-Kashii has the upper hand as she defeats Renka and also discovers that Renka is not real, but a puppet. She also discovers the brain behind it all, another member of the Red Team. Rin-Kashii wastes no time as she strikes the culprit down, after first informing her about her plans, which include striking a deal with Team Green to make sure that she is safe no matter who wins. Akira timely appears from the woods when Katsuya was trying to sacrifice himself for the life of his friends. Akira asks Katsuya to rather go to Asuka's rescue while it's still not too late, insisting that it just has to be him for the job. Katsuya hurriedly jogs into the woods, affirming that he promises to save Asuka at any cost. That was the only way he could get Katsuya out of there so he could face the old man who was there all the while. He bends down and picks up a stone, aiming it toward the old man's direction. But he stretches his left hand to block the stone from getting to him, and the stone breaks into pieces and scatters to the ground. Akira looks surprised at his ability and curiously asks if that was a chemical reaction he had just seen. Akira is still in shock as the old man keeps telling him that he is aware of Akira's abilities, and not just the use of cannon, which everyone knows as his only ability. The man begins to run after Akira, saying that he just figured Akira can no longer use the cannon ability because a while ago, he aimed a stone at him instead. Akira, looking scared at the man's approach, began to run into the woods as though he was truly sacred and trying to hide from him. But he soon comes out with a wooden sword, one which is rightly known as Reindu's ability. He swooshes the sword in the air, which releases some form of forceful blast that sweeps the old man off his feet and lands him on the ground. Akira approaches the man lying on his back on the ground and explains to him that he could only figure out about cannon not being his ability because he let it happen that way. Meanwhile, Ringo suspects that there is an assassin who has been sent to eliminate their leader. Momoko, the assassin, tries to ambush the leader, Yuyuto, and aims her cannon at him, but he is quick to notice and blocks her. Ringo runs to Yuyuto to warn him of Momoko about how dangerous she could be. When asked why she turned her back on them, she replies that Kuro and Oshi were her children, emphasizing that a parent would do anything possible for her children. Yuyuto steps forward and commands her to release her cannon and stand down. She seems unmoved as she stretches to pick up Taro, a suckling baby she hid somewhere, and they gasp in fear of what she might do to harm the baby. However, she offers a deal for Yuyuto to choose between losing his position and losing the baby. Of course, he chose to lose his position as she began to count down. She bids him farewell and disappears with the baby. Unknowingly to Momoko, Ringo is following her to where she headed. She interrupts her call with Kuro after she said on the phone that it was over. Ringo echoed to her that for the sake of everyone risking their lives out of respect for their leader's devotion, she couldn't let her go with the child. Momoko releases a blast at Ringo and she jumps over and dodges. Momoko didn't stop, she kept blasting at her and walked in her direction, saying that Ringo couldn't have the child if she kept running and hiding. Momoko wouldn't stop until she got the answers she needed from Ringo. She asks to know who the king of Team Green is. Ringo comes out trembling and replies that she won't answer that question. Momoko sees how scared she already is and stretches out her cannon to fire at her, but she calls out to Akira for help. Surprisingly, a cannon grows from her hand and releases a blast at a nearby rock. This was arranged by her and Akira before now, she just didn't believe it would work that way. She kindly asks Momoko to hide the baby somewhere safe so he doesn't get hurt in the course of their battle. Momoko listens and drops the baby, heads back to face Ringo, and they begin to blast at each other repeatedly. As they go on and on about who is to keep the child, Ringo tricks Momoko with her ability and gets hold of the child, then blasts rocks to fall and bury her. Akira interrupts Kuro's moment of silence in the woods, informing him that while he was busy with their leader and who is king, he had set up a situation with Oshi and his friends, Kumajiri and Yuri. Kumajiri passes a message to Yuri from Akira, stating that he, Akira, wants her to survive the battle against Oshi so he can personally apologize to her. They stand in position, ready to attack, and about to give him the Gojo treatment. Akira and his allies are challenged to battle, as they are confronted by a team of highly skilled opponents, with each participant showcasing their unique abilities and tactics. Akira makes the first move, releasing a blast of fire from his right arm toward the direction of the opponent. However, he is shocked at the skillful counterattack by Ciroa, his opponent, who begins to boast of how superior his abilities are compared to Akira's. He immediately recalls the narration Ringo gave to them sometime in the past of how Ciroa's abilities work. He uses his abilities to turn people he saves into his slaves. She narrates based on their experience when they were captured by Ugami and Ciroa. As Ugami approached to eliminate them, Ciroa came to their rescue, or so he made them think. That is how his abilities are triggered. In other words, his ability lets him force others to repay debts they owe him in one way or another, she continues to narrate. These memories flash back in Akira's head after he noticed Siko trying to aim a ball of marble at him using his catapult and he managed to dodge. This was all the handwork of Ciroa, who had made Siko one of his slaves. Ciroa then speaks to Akira, acknowledging that he came down there with the plan in his mind. But he is the one in charge and will continue to be. A little frightened as he saw himself surrounded by everyone there, Akira asked Ciroa if that was what his kingdom was all about. Ciroa replies, sounding unbothered about what Akira might be plotting, that he came up with such a question. Akira keeps being a storyteller and entertaining Ciroa while he listens with an uninterested look on his face. Ciroa responds to Akira, telling him that his stories were never enough to make him pause his attacks. He only wanted to indulge him. And while Ciroa kept going on about why Akira's words couldn't convince him to pause his attacks, he added that if, even for a moment back then, he thought to himself, thank goodness, that automatically made Akira indebted to him. Just as he was speaking, Akira felt his spell wrap around his neck, signifying that he now belonged to Ciroa. Ciroa did not just stop there, he further added that the moment Akira appeared before him, the battle was already over. Ciroa made him repay by temporarily losing the use of his right leg. Akira didn't stop staring at how he gradually lost his right leg to a self-acclaimed king, a psychopath at that. Ciroa somehow forced Akira to make use of that ability no one knows about by controlling his slaves to attempt an attack on him. As they approached him, he teleported himself and tried to release a blast on Ciroa, but he was abruptly interrupted by Ciroa's slaves which he had placed there, knowing that Akira would try to make himself close enough to finish him off. However, Ciroa explains to Akira that he wasn't so much interested in learning whatever hidden ability he had, he just wanted to know it and then eliminate him thereafter. He said this while driving a penknife through his belly. Akira's life flashes before his eyes as his eyeballs bulge out like they'd fall off their sockets to the ground. Things take a different turn as Akira begins to speak while on the ground, and still heavily bleeding from the deep cut from Ciroa's knife. He asked what if Ciroa only thought he was able to drive him to that situation because he manipulated him into thinking he did. He continues, after all, that he was exactly where he was supposed to be face to face with his enemy. Akira swiftly got up and blocked the knife coming his way from Ciroa with his bare palms, leaving his enemy in a complete state of imbalance and incompetence. As he goes on trying to remind Ciroa that what he said earlier on wasn't about burning about time, but the content of what he said is what mattered the most. He unleashes some powerful ability that forcefully pushes Ciroa some distance away, and hits him hard against a tree. Just as Ciroa falls to the ground, powerless and lifeless, those whom he had made his slaves felt the spell in the form of chains fall off their necks. Akira seems to have been 10 steps ahead of Ciroa all this while. He planned it all. Meanwhile, Ciroa has a friend who's usually been regarded as non-human due to his unmatched strength and abilities. He seems to be the only threat left for Akira and his companions to defeat in battle. Ciroa remembers him and their memories together back in Shinai Academy as they plan to create a kingdom for both of them to rule. Ciroa mutters some words under his breath, let's create it. Yuri and Ciroa's friend in the academy, Oshi, are fighting in a tough battle, exchanging blows at each other. Oshi seems baffled about Yuri's act of bravery, because he knows quite well that Yuri can't defeat him in battle on a normal day, and she has already been injured on that same arm she's dashing blows with. What could she be made of? He kept asking in silence. Yuri didn't back down either, despite facing one of the toughest creatures she had ever known. Her toughness kept putting those bothering questions in Oshi's head. Yuri finds a spot in his chest as his weakness and delivers a hard blow he didn't see coming on such short notice. Oops, that wasn't his weakness, she only thought it was. She soon realizes that her ability is gone after throwing her lucky punch, or so she thought. Just before she gathers herself back from creating such a dangerous vulnerability for his attack, she could see the blow coming before it eventually came and knocked her to the nearest wall, leaving her crashing to the ground. Oshi clenches his fist and tries to eliminate Yuri. But Akira's voice from inside the woods suddenly interrupts his intended action. Akira tries to offer him a deal if he disengages from eliminating Yuri and the others, asking that they face each other and finish things once and for all. However, if he does go ahead to eliminate Yuri and the others, he will eliminate Ciroa himself and disappear. Oshi, in rage, accepts the offer, also realizing that Ciroa is dead either way because Akira had left him half dead. Akira shortly appears right before Oshi. They have a brief talk and Oshi screams in anger that he will avenge his friend's death. As he makes his move toward Akira, stretching his clenched fist to deliver a blow, Akira stylishly dodges and reaches for his chest, landing him a powerful blow that causes some blood to spill from his mouth and he crashes on his face to the ground. This was a combined ability from Yuri. She had taught and thoroughly rehearsed it with Akira before this battle began. After falling to the ground, Oshi gets up as though he could come back for a few more blows from Akira, but he just passes a message to Yuri and falls back to where he rightly belongs on the ground. In the message, he asks Yuri to help out the kids that his scars usually remind her of. The battle ends with Akira's team being the champions, and the crowd who were watching all applaud and cheer them for their victory. The bright mode is interrupted by two serious-looking strange men and a lady. The lady demands that Akira completes one more job and meets her at a tower nearby before his role as king is done. Yuri shows concern as some men carry their wounded friends on a stretcher, but the lady insists that they are not worried. As he sat there wandering in thoughts, someone he knew from the past, Amoto, appeared and congratulated him on his team's victory. Amoto seems to have been watching Akira all the while, leaving him looking shocked. Amoto, however, came to get back what Akira owed him some time ago, but Akira responded that he didn't have it to repay him at the moment. Akira is more troubled about what kind of abilities Amoto has that he could be watching him, and he had no clue until he was told. Amoto offered to show his ability to Akira since he was curious to know. Akira got blasted before he could notice, got swept off his feet, and landed back on the ground. All Amoto was interested in was the 200 points Akira owed him. As he laid there, he began to have flashbacks of how he chose to play this game instead of going to school. After all, it might be worth it. That concludes the anime recap of Battle in 5 seconds after meeting for now. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below and make sure you are subscribed. I'm out.